Okay guys, so we've done a little bit of Copernicus, a little bit of Vellum, and we started blocking things out. So what we're going to do now is we're going to finish off this asset. So we're going to take this guy and this guy and this guy and finally one more, and then we'll add all the materials. So I'm going to quickly finish all the materials here. So all I did here is I basically went in and I pressed Alt and I duplicated across and left the export flags on these, and then just copied these across, and these are all pointing to painter maps on disk. So there is so on this guy there is actually a material. I press Shift R. There is actually a material variant on each one of these. They're very subtle. And then I'm going to do the same on monster. Well, I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to just steal these materials, but I'm going to do the same on monster B. So what I've done in the material library is I'm going to click Alt and Alt again. So these materials are identical, but as we know, the path is dynamic. So if they existed on disk, they would actually grab something from disk. So we don't have anything on disk at the moment. So what I'm going to do is press Alt on here and Alt on here. And then I'm going to just tidy this up and connect all this up, and that one into there and that one into there, like so. So you've got a main material network, and then you've got these materials being assigned. So the materials don't exist for pink 02 and 3 yet, so you're going to get some geometry color. So this is just going to grab the geometry color, which was a weird pink red color. So I'm just going to stop the render, and I'm just going to quickly jump over to Painter and time lapse through this bit because we've already seen this bit. So I loaded up monster B pink 01 and made it pink 02, and I just made a variation, and then I just exported the textures. So I went exported them all as EXRs, and that's it. So I'm going to quickly plow through now and just do a time lapse on this bit and return back in Houdini. Okay, so I quickly just smashed through 3 different material variants in Substance Painter, and at the time of doing that I really wanted to do all that in Copernicus, but I'm just doing it in Painter, so I can treat that as a very hero type of asset. And then maybe later on another project, if we've got more than 3 and we've got lots of these, I'm going to have like the stuff inside and all this kind of in a more procedural Copernicus way. But for now we have these 3 sets of EXR textures. So I'm just going to go over to my rat gen here, and I'm just going to grab that monster B pink 0. Yeah, I might just grab it from here actually and see whether we can get everything updated. I might flush out my existing rats just to make sure that they are clean as well. So if we go to the EXR textures, we should have everything we need in there, like so. So that's all good. And then maybe we're going to generate new rats. So I'm just going to remove those for now. Oh, it's being used, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, not to worry. We'll just save over. So I'll just go in, and then hopefully if we press up and dirty old generate, and I might just force this to write. It is fight. Yeah, that's okay. So we're good to go. So we should have a texture pack for monster B pink 01, pink 03, pink 02. There it is. So yeah, so I'm going to just generate and cook those rat files. So they'll just be basically, as they're generating, these shaders are like awaiting for those to appear. If you remember, the assignments for this and this lie within this material network here. So for example, monster B pink 03, if I go inside, it's actually automatically waiting for these. So as soon as they appear on disk, they will appear. So it doesn't look like they've appeared just yet. So let's just wait for this to kind of go through. Yeah, you can see they're still churning away there. In fact, let's just find one that has worked. Pink 02. So if we go up into material library for pink 02, and then hopefully we should have got like a base color should be there. There we go. So there's base color for both the skin and the fascia on the UDIM tiles. So we've seen this before anyway, so I'm just showing you how I'm going to quickly get together. And again, this whole thing is for speed and just blocking stuff out. I would then probably revisit the look dev stage and spend a bit of time not making this look psychedelically purple. But it's just to show you that this actually does work. So, and we can also do this. We can, if you don't have Substance Painter, if you want to see a Copernicus version, let me know and we'll work that out and we'll make that happen. So this is still generating those. So we're going to get textures for everything. So I'm just going to wait for that to finish, and then we'll just test render each one. In fact, let me just right click, change this wire so he is now geometry variant B contains 3 material variants. And we're going to look at this pose one as well in a minute and just copy this across. We're also going to just grab all of this, and if I'm going to grab all of this and press Alt, drag it across to prepare for the Model C while that's all kind of doing its thing. And I'm just going to start this from scratch, and then inside of there I'm going to just change that to C. I think we'll have 3 for Model C as well. So that kind of template's quickly set up, ready to be used for when we start doing painter stuff. There's nothing on disk at the moment for this, so it'll be kind of pointless, but at least we can have this set up rather quickly. So we'll revisit this in just a second, and we might even throw in another Vellum version, but let's just test Monster B, Shift R. So the wrap file's loaded in straight away. And let's look at this version. This was a yellow version, then we should have like a pink version, a purpley version. Just wait for those textures did they finish in tops? Yes, they did. So just wait for Karma just to kind of run all this through. Oops, we're in CPU there, we want to be in XPU. So there's the purple version. So there we are, we have material variations in here quite quickly in this kind of template fashion. So as you know, once we get the model sorted for Monster C, we will see how bad that is from Nomad Scope. So when I jump in, because of the previous setup, Monster C should load in the high res, Monster should load in, there he is. So there's both the high res and the low res, and it's going to spit out both again like so. So we've got the high res geometry, and then we can do the whole thing whether we decide to do the remeshing or anything like that as well. Sorry, the remeshing or the re-UVing. So I'm just going to bring in this as it is for now. I wonder how bad the UVs are on this. Let's have a look. Doesn't seem to be any overlaps unless let me just check. I was just making sure that the color wasn't blocking any kind of red. the UVs are, I think they were automated from Nomad Sculpt, and I just went auto UV. I didn't spend any time with the retop or anything. There's no overlaps, so it might be okay for that. So in that case, we could just generate the fascia and see what happens on this guy as well. So we can prepare this guy really quickly. So because you've seen this already, I'll probably speed this bit up as well. Okay, so the fascia has been created. Let's have a look. Does it kind of sit within the... might be okay. We might have got away with it. Interestingly enough, the procedural enhancements we did to push in have actually just worked on this. So we have this wire, let's go like that, without and with, so just make him a bit fatter. Okay, so I think everything else is pretty much straight through. We're just going to use this as we did before and do a quad remesh on this. See what the damage is. Let's cook that. Again, this is very, you don't do stuff this quickly normally. I'm just kind of getting in the model and just getting something in place. It's like a placeholder. So you might want to just show a load of concepts to someone, but you know, have like a rough texture on them, or even the occlusion renders, and just get the discussion going. And then you can always revisit. Cook button did something bad. Okay, don't know what that is. Let me try saving this scene and let me just check. That data. Oh, I see. Well, it turns out that quad remesher doesn't make the folders up front, so it's probably not been able to find that this location here. So if you remember on the monsters project, within assets under monsters and then data, and then in our modeling department we would have been chucking stuff on geo and then monster C, so we don't have that folder yet, so we probably just needed to kind of to build that. Actually, it's strange because Houdini's native savers do actually create excuse me, if you look in here, there's like an FBX folder, so they do usually do that. So if we just create a new folder called FBX, and then it can dump that in there, so that should now hopefully just cook and then find that. Hopefully that should find and dump some stuff in there. It's interesting that it doesn't actually auto. I must have manually made those beforehand then. But that's just a little thing there. So if you're using quad remesher, it's not making the folder up front for you. So just before you save it, even though you may have got a path defined automatically via the controller thing that we made, if you remember here, the path has to be built first. There it is. So I think the next is just doing any kind of prep work. I'll just say that's okay, and then I'm just going to do an auto UV. I'm not going to take time to manual UV this just yet. I'm just going to see what the damage is. Space 5, and then I wonder if we're already looking with the overlaps on. Overlaps, so there's no red. There's nothing red here. Let me just hide that. Smooth. There's nothing red there, so I'm going to just pop that in there and leave the manual UVs for another time. Well, when I've got a bit more time. Then I'm just going to do what we've done before. Space 1. Save that out. And then I'm going to do a Boolean operation, just to make sure we've not clicked anything. See what's happened up here. We do actually have a geometry that overlaps. So that's something that I would need to go in and fix. I can nudge that around up here. So what's happening there is the inside geometry is just kind of getting pushed. Now you can do lots of things. You could, well, we could do anything we want really with this. Let's have a look. How could we? Really want it to be too. That might be okay. It might be a bit iffy around there still. I mean, I suppose I could project and then do a relative offset. But let's see what we get. So sorry about that, just messing around a bit here. Hopefully when this goes through a smooth, you could do another VDB from polygons at this point and just really smooth that mesh out, because you can see there's a little bit of stepping and stuff. Just for speed, I'm just going to quickly push this through like so. I'm going to try and push this back through that quad remesher. So as you can see, if you're auto UVing, you don't really want to do that until you're really happy with, sorry, if you're manually UVing, you don't really want to do that until you know that fascia is actually sitting exactly where you want it and it's not interpenetrating through the surface skin. But for the sake of speed and the power of video editing, we'll just quickly push forward with this. So we'll do that, and then we'll quickly let it run all the way through, and we'll just take a peek at this point here. So it's going to kind of force it through all those SOP operations here, and then hopefully we don't have any obvious kind of intersections and stuff. So that seems like we've got a bit of negative fat and stuff. Might not be perfect. He's got a fat back.
I can't talk, I've got a fat back.
Right, so we've got this now. So it's just a placeholder, and then the rest is just automatic again, I guess. So we've got one of the other concepts where we've not bothered with UV topology. We've just accepted whatever the model has given us, which was me when I did this in Nomad Sculpt, and we're throwing it down. And I am really rushing through this because videos 2 and 3, I think, kind of talk through this quite a bit. So hopefully now if we just pop down here, we can save this out, and this will generate a folder for us, which is quite handy. So I'll just save that to disk, and we weren't using, what's that doing there? We weren't using the cage stuff, so I'll just bypass it. And if you look, we've got the low res fascia, and then if you look on this side, we've got the high res geometry that we're going to bake our details from. And as you can see, I was throwing in some weird stuff in here just to get some interesting vertex colors, which I actually didn't use, so we don't really need it. But you could really just do what you like, and this is kind of stepping on the Copernicus territory a little bit as well, which is really going to be exciting. The reason I've got this here, it's the same geometry, but it's just so painted doesn't freak out. But the advantage of having that there is you could subdivide that and add some really triplanar geometry details in there and bake those out as well, or you know, copy some spheres and get some spots on it and get some weird details on it. So if you look here, when we move this guy out, we just did a split. This is a bit of a side thing, but I'm just going to show you. If I split this and I split to the left, I take the skin and I say just give me the skin there on the left. I create a null here, and when you do a split, the other, whoops, no, that's not that, and do a null here like that, we'll get this guy over here, and it's actually at the origin, so it's actually, we're going to do something with it. So what could we do? Could do some, let's just do some, let's do a really silly thing. Let's do a scatter, let's do a sphere, let's do a copy to points, copy to points. Let's just grab that, and let's just scatter that onto there and to there, and scatter some points on him. Let's just control the size of those points that we've created with a attribute adjust float, and it's going to default to p scale, so it's going to kind of shrink to nothing because the p scale attribute is 0, so you can globally set it. But we want to go and do something silly like random, set a min and then a max for some kind of warts or something. I don't know, they just do something really, they're quite massive, aren't they? Maybe we just want to do, occasionally has a few big ones like that, and I think that's scattering on the surface as well, so do a merge. Now the nice thing about the high res geometry is that we we don't really need UVs in Substance Painter. So even though this is two separate bits, I could just do a VDB from polygons and go to work on this. It's like as a high-res sculpt, and we already have the low-res topology, which we've extracted here. So I'm kind of going backwards a little bit here. So, you know, so I might do something like 0.005 and then just do a VDB SDF VDB SDF smooth smooth that out. It's going to totally erase that. That's okay. I might come back and add a few more points. Might add a little bit more size to try and get some. So it's very you know, you can do some weird stuff, and then you could bias that off of the curvature, and you can start to kind of see how you could have stuff like this in Copernicus, where you can do stuff directly on the geometry and rasterize that and bring it in. But all we're doing is we're going to create another geometry. So if I do a VDB, sorry, a VDB convert, stick it back to polygons, and put them, and we've got the polygon mesh. Now we have to be careful because this would be what it's going to bake out. It's going to bake this new model out. It's going to take our low res stuff and it's going to bake that on. So you might want to bias that away. So then we can just do a merge. So you'll have both meshes, but you probably notice that and they're both sat out like that. So that's what I'm saying about having a little bit of a place to do more kind of VDB stuff, that you could bake out these high res details. All of these will get baked out onto the low res in normal and displacement maps, and you can do that in Painter or Copernicus. So yeah, so because we've got like a P scale here, we could, let's have a look what we could do. I just think it'd be nice to kind of just make those a little bit smaller, because I think they're gonna stick out, aren't they, or something. So let's just do the where's the geometry? Let's just create an attribute adjust. What should we do? Shall we just measure? Should we just get the thickness of this? Measure the thickness. I'll calculate the thickness. You can call this anything you want as well. So if I just trigger that to be P scale and look at it like that, I'll just say it's normalized, and we've got a P scale. Plug that in, hide that, and then copy that, and then you'll have P scale. So you can dick around with this, but you can randomize. But what we can do is maybe just and then maybe set this to like a multiply. Oops, not a multiply, a minimum or something, or maximum. I think minimum. I'm not really thinking this through, to be honest. And then we can just merge that on, and then when that is converted, you don't have any warts. And so there's absolutely everything you can do with this to get some kind of geometry variant inside of here as well. So we've got something a little different now to work with. So again, that's going to be our high res, and that will again put that physical occlusion across and give you something different as well. So we can bake that one out. So we've actually just quickly thrown in another model and thrown in some extra surface detail really quick. It looks like an octopus now, doesn't it? So I didn't really have anything in mind when I sculpted these. So I was watching Alien at the time, so maybe that's what happened. So that's completely set up, and we can pick that up in Painter. So we have a Model C already set up with some textures waiting, so we can Alt Alt like this, plug in like that, link that into that, and link that into that, so the libraries are all linked. And then that's just awaiting some Painter love now, so that is it. So we can quickly go over to Substance Painter, which is still open, as you can see here, and I might as well save this as Monster C, like that. And where did we have Monster B? Work and publish in versions. So I'm going to just create Monster C. I'm going to create a new folder called work, and I'm going to create a new folder called publish. So what I would normally do is I'd work in here and call this something that I want. So for example, I would keep my naming conventions the same as what I had in B, and when I'm ready to publish, I would publish here. So I'm going to go up to C. I'm going to work straight in publish just for simplicity, but I'm going to save this as Monster C. And so we've got a template file, and then I'm just going to swap this out like we've done in the past and rebake as Monster C. So again, there's a bit of manual work, but it's not too painful, and you get the ability to kind of inherit everything you've done before, but then go in and customize. And if you really needed to hand paint stuff, you've got the whole application of Painter here. But if you do this in Copernicus, you're going to get a lot of proceduralism, but probably not as much hand painted stuff unless you start using the new paint mask and trying to do in a PBR kind of workflow, which I think is possible, but much easier to do in Painter. But we can certainly explore that in Copernicus. So this is just saving away. So while Painter's saving away, let's take a look at what we've got. So we've got Monster A with 3 material variants, and we've got a free pose one here, which will add some materials in a bit. We've got Monster B with his materials, and we could just, I'll show you how quick this system is now to kind of get another geometry variant. And then we've got a Monster C. So we can plug him in so we don't forget, but he won't have any materials, so he'll just look a bit weird if we save the USD out. But we essentially will have monsters that do feel like they're in the same kind of type of monster, I guess. Maybe, you know, they're maybe he's like, I don't know, maybe he's like a soldier one and they're like worker ones or scout ones. I have no, like ants, I have no idea. And we have loads of other monsters, but we're going to set them up in a different scene and do some other things with them as well, because they're a little bit more, well, there'll be no difference to what we do here, but inside of here they'll be a bit more involved, because the new monsters are going to be a little bit more complicated. It's going to have eyeballs attached and teeth and whatnot. So back in Painter, we've got Monster C01. So I'm going to go edit project configurations, and I'm going to switch this out like we did before to Monster Painter, Monster C, and FBX is where we're publishing to, and I'm going to grab that like so. That's going to load in the low res skin and the fascia if all goes well. But I click OK, that would have helped. So that should load in. So you can see it's trying to apply the old texture maps onto these UVs, and they're over here, which is correct because that's what we want. Then I'm going to go over to the bake-in, and I'm going to remove the previous model, and I'm going to apply Monster C, and very helpfully it's remembered that we need to be in here. So I'm going to go inside, and it's going to apply the cage on, and you can see some of the things that we might get here now because we've got these bumps and stuff. So maybe sometimes trying to do everything in one is not great. You know, sometimes it's a little bit tricky to bake every lot of complicated things together like that. But because in Painter they've got an underscore high and an underscore low, it's going to know which ones to paint. So technically if they were in the same spot, then maybe they'd be okay, because we're baking based on mesh. It's going to say everything in high in this FBX, it's going to match. So there's one thing I may have forgotten to do before we bake, but I think we might get away with it. I'm just going to bake these anyway. and see what we get. If I go back into this guy, something I may have not thought of just now is the fascia would have had a name associated with it, and now it does not because we've created new geometry. So I would imagine in here there was a name. So if we go to the geometry spreadsheet, no, this is still in blooming Solaris world, isn't it? So if I go in here and go parameters, go into geometry spreadsheet, it had a name called fascia. So that might be something that we've forgotten to do. So maybe I can just copy the attribute across. So maybe we could, rather than having to remember, so if I say I want to go from, maybe from that null here to this final geometry, and then we say I want to take the, let's just make sure this is a primitive. I say I want to take the name, not the color. That should give him a fascia name back. If I right click and change the wire, plug that in there. It's a bit messy, isn't it? Let's just try and get that out so it's not such a hidden wire. So just okay. Okay, so we're going to merge them together and he'll be over there, and there's base. We should still have this. Let's have a look what we've got. And we haven't got a path anymore. Okay, let's just make a new one. So we've got a skin, and okay, so that's good. So I'm going to bake that out. So Substance Painter will use those to try and do clean baking as well. So we've kind of, it's quite a nice setup, because if you know what you're doing with Painter, so you can kind of modify stuff and throw it out. I mean, I'm not sure how Painter would have what's it doing. If I return, I'm not sure how Painter's actually baked these maps out. So yeah, so you can see it's kind of screwed up one of them like so. So what we need to do is we need to just quickly re-import the mesh. So if I go re-import the mesh like so, and then if we rebake, it's the same file, so it should just auto reload. But if you're not sure, you can always delete and bring it back in to be the high Painter mesh like that, and then bake them out, and that should now use these mappings, fascia low, and it should know which one to go from the low and the high to bake each one together. So fascia low, fascia high, skin low, skin high, and that should be okay. So it's a little bit of a thing here. So I just thought I'd throw that in just in case you were thinking, what's the point of baking out low res when it's already low res? But it's just a nice way of hacking it around. You can do what you like with these kind of things, or you can bake individual bits. So we've kind of finished in here just as a temporary solution to quickly run in and do a little bit of concept work in here. So the next thing is just to create the material variants on our new friend here. Once it's finished baking, we would essentially do the usual, tweak some shaders, save it to the monster C, pink 01, 02, 03, export them, convert them to rats, and then they're automatically set up. So then we'd have everything finished, ready to play with in Vellum in some other setups and stuff. So I will go ahead and quickly time lapse this bit. Alright, we've finished baking. feel like we've got some weird bake issues here. Let me just see if I can identify where that would be. It could just be nasty UVs, to be honest. I think that might be just bad UV distortion. And again, cutting corners, it can really not be a good thing sometimes. So maybe the body in here for this guy, take a look at him. Space, yeah, look, you see the distortion. So that's not good. If you're wanting to do UV baking from high res to low res, it needs to map on correctly with a nice set of UVs. So we would have to auto UV this guy up, manually UV this guy up, just to kind of get some better results. And if you remember, we had a setup up here, but if we dive in, it's going to be the same as what we had last time. So you'd have to go in and start working on this rather quickly. So in he pops like this, and then if you remember, it's symmetrical, thankfully for us. Then it was about making the groups, remember, on this guy to try and get this to work, but those groups are going to be garbage, so we would have to start again. You'd have to click on this, go into wireframe and start chopping this up so that you can possibly flatten this out a little bit more. Okay, so a bit of a bodge job. I'm not actually that great at UVing, so, but at least there might be a little bit of distortion. It might be less apparent. So that's just a quick way of trying to UV stuff up, but I'm not an expert at that. So all we have to do is just rebake this guy down, and I think we should probably just rebake him as well. So we inherit some stuff there, but that should all be okay. And then I will rebake the low, and I don't think we need to rebake the high, but I'll do it anyway. And then once that's done, I'll just pop back into Painter as we were trying to fix that smudginess there. And I'll do a file re-import mesh. Re-import the mesh with the new UVs, and then we'll take the bake mesh and update that as well and rebake everything. Okay, my machine crashed, so just so you know that we got this far where we'd re-UV'd this guy very quickly. I think I know we time-lapsed it, but I think it took me 10 minutes to just knock some UVs out, which were a bit better than the auto UVs. They're not perfect, but they are probably, let me just hide the grid, they're probably going to be alright for Substance Painter. So then we did a boolean and we got look at these UVs there. They're coming from Nomad Scope, so they're not great, but they have no overlap, so it might do the job. So we have the skin, and we've got the procedural generated fascias. So we essentially have, back in here, we have this kind of thing to play around with. So we've got the skin, which is the red and the green, that's one mesh. And we've got the kind of inside negative pocket and the fascia, which is basically going to be this guy. So in our Painter setup, what I've decided to do is change things up a little bit. So well, not completely different really, but we have the low res geometry that we're going to send to Painter, So we're going to send them apart like this for baking purposes. If you remember, we've got the transform to try to move him across for now. And we're going to, I don't think we need to do the actual move because of the way we're doing things. But I like to just keep it safe. So what I'm going to do is in here, we bring in both and I move them across. And then just to keep things cleaner, like I said, I remove the inside skin, just so. But I might have a go at baking that, but the problem with the inside skin, it doesn't exist in the high-res scope, so I'm not really sure. I might just try and do something procedurally with that later, and we'll see how it looks if it's missing, because it's just a concept anyway, right? So that's it, basically. As you've seen before, we end up with a shot material to identify the layer that we want to paint on, and the mesh itself. So it's the fascia low and the skin. So these two. So Painter knows it's got two objects that you might want to bake over or iterate each bake over. So you're going to take a high-res version, which is over here, and it's going to bake these high-res versions. So what I've decided to do is, because the high-res version is just here and I move him over to match the low-res version, as you can see, I used to bring in the fascia here, like I would do it here and then move that over, which is fine. But what I decided to do is just pull the fascia out at this point here, so it gets the transform. Well, it doesn't get a transform, but it matches. So it's just that. And then I did some procedural, like I just did treated this like it's going to have some really high res detail on it, which is overkill because you could have done this in Painter completely. So I just did this. So what I've done is I've calculated the thickness attribute and I've scattered some points on, and then I've created a p-scale, and I'm taking the minimum value of p-scale. So when we copy, we can take advantage of the thickness attribute here. As you can see, I'm doing that here. So if I just bias that down a little bit, and then I'm just offsetting the sphere in negative Z, so it's kind of eating into the surface a little bit. So when we copy that in, it's just offset. So if we were to just zero that out, it's going to sit on top, but I kind of wanted it to just sit in a little bit, so we'll just push it back in. Then I did a VDB from polygons to kind of do a VDB smooth and just smooth that in a little bit. And then I convert. Before I do that, I noticed when I did do smoothing, I deviated away from my original position a little bit, and the resolution of the VDB from polygons up here was a little large, so I wanted to conform this a little bit more, so I'll just make this a bit smaller, like so. But it's going to make those a little stronger, but it's up to you how you want to do it. Then I did another VDB on this geometry here, and I subdivide, because if you don't subdivide, it can kind of create this faceting look on the VDB. You have to then do a VDB smooth. So I've just took that VDB and combined them together, and that's just going to make sure that I've got like the very tips kind of coming through. So this is the smoothed, and then this is the combined. So you just grab the tip and do a convert to polygons, and I've done a bit of adaptivity 0.1, which basically does exactly this. It creates like an adaptive kind of mesh. It's a bit more efficient. So I'm still going to get that detail, but if you increase it, you start to kind of like, it kind of reduces the ISO mesh. So it's just not going to be completely killing Painter when it goes in. I think that's probably okay. I'm not sure if Painter would prefer triangles, but let's just try. I think it works. I mean, we could do like a remesh on this and see what happens, but it's another process. Then that's also going to deviate from the original sculpt. But you could do like a low res, a small triangulation size. There's a little bit of faceting on here, so I'm wondering where that's coming from. Is that coming from Could it be coming from this mesh? I feel like we're getting it from there. What I'll do is I'll just do a VDB SDF smooth on this guy. Try to maintain the curvature a little bit. It still looks a bit crap. Oh, look, that's probably a better one. I'm still seeing. I wonder if it's a viewport thing. Let me try the Gaussian. Yeah, it's gone. Okay. Then I'll do a VDB combine. And then I'll convert that. So it's a bit overkill because you could do this many ways in Substance Painter, because you know, you could create your own displacement from Substance Painter. But what I'm saying is this could be really high detail that you bake into the geometry if you want. And then when you merge it together, it merges alongside this high-res geometry. So you've actually got now two high-res geometries that you're going to send to Substance Painter. So I can save that out. So we've got the high res on this stream here, and you got the low res on here. So we're going to bake all those details onto this geometry here. So I mean, they say low res, they're quite high res, and if I retoppled these, I would make them probably half the resolution for my low res, but they're probably okay for a concept. So we got the painter, and that's it. We're kind of done with the all just mucking around. I mean, I might re-UV these on the left, and I might re-topo it and add bits and bobs, but the framework's there, I guess. So that's Houdini's section done. And then if we jump back over to Painter, so I've set up the scene as you've seen before, and I'm just going to rebake all of these. So I'm just going to see whether this is all good. So this fascia low and fascia high is coming from basically Houdini knows, and it's coming from this path and this path. So it's going to know to bake high to high and low to low. So it's going to know to bake from that to that, and then we'll shift them back in position. I have a sneaky feeling that I don't need to move them. Shall we try it? Let's see what happens if I take off the move here. Let's just see. Obviously it's going to drag it through this remesh, this VDB nonsense again, so just bear that in mind if that's sensitive to position. And let's just hide that. So we just need to update Substance Painter with those files. Give that a second to get to disk. Let's see what the damage is here. So let's have a look. So this is going to auto update, so that's going to go red. So I'm going to return to Paint, and I'm going to go edit, re-import the mesh. It's going to bring them all into one spot now. But I'm hoping when I bake these out, so there they are. So if we go to the eyeball, you can see you've got the fascia, and then we've got the skin. Now I've pre-baked this already, so it's got like the dots on it already, but I wanted to see whether I needed to move them. So if we go here, and we'll just set this to like, let's just make it kind of quick on 512 and bake and see whether or not this works. I don't know if we'll be able to see inside, because you're just looking at one mesh, the skin mesh, but it's going to go and bake through them all, and oh, it's done. So let's just look at the damage, see what happens. So we're looking at the skin. It seems to have worked okay. And then let's look at the fascia. Yeah, that seems to have that worked. Yeah, I think, whoops, wrong keys. Let me press shift and right mouse and drag along to get the lights to spin. Yeah, you see, it seems to have worked. So we don't actually need to move stuff around in this case, because we used the names at bake time from Houdini's names. So with that done, I'll just do this and then time lapse this bit, because this bit could take a bit of time. Okay, seems to have done. Let's wait for this to kind of load back in. Oh, I think we've finished. Okay, so check. Oh, the ID didn't work, but everything else has worked. We're not using the ID anyway, so it's okay. However, it does bug me that it's not worked. Let me try this, chap. The ID worked for that, so interesting. Interesting. Well, that's probably okay for what we want. So we've got our first texture pack that we can, well, it's the same material as the other monster for now. So I realized when I did this, I could have saved these out as smart materials. So as you know, for every monster I've created essentially 3 substance painter scenes, which contains a layer stack for the fascia and the skin. But I could have actually exported the fascia and the skin smart materials into like a little library and just drag them in every time I build a new scene as well. But yeah, it's how you want to work really. But I'm not sure why the color's not worked on here for both. Oh, I do. Yeah, it's the dirt buildup. So it's basically doing an ambient occlusion dirt buildup. So inside would have a lot of dirt. So it's, if you needed separate, you would have to move him across after all. So just that's if that makes sense. I don't know if we clip this guy. If I clip him, maybe we'll see the blueness inside, and that's the dirt. That's like the, you know, there's a lot of dirt there, so you can see where there's more dirt on this kind of crevice here. Well, this is a lot of dirt, so you would have to put a group on this or split this. A way to do it without smoothing it is just to split it again, I guess. You could split this, split this with the skin, so he goes to the skin, stick him in there, and then maybe copy and paste that, split him there, so, and then merge them back. We've actually got nice control over both of them now, I guess, independent control, and then attribute adjust. So then when we do this clip, we'll get like a nice kind of thing going off in there. I've made a mess of my network. So yeah, so let's just make a bit of room for this nonsense. Again, these are things that they just happen to appear when you see how this has become. We've branched off from that template we originally started, and we've been experimenting with things, but it's really interesting, right, to do it like that. So we're going to save that out. So we're not saving the clip, that's over there, we're just saving this. So we've got this optional vertex color that we could use. So if we went back into Painter, I turned the eyeball off, and then I went back to baking, and then I baked out the, if I just turned everything off and then just kept the ID, and then the material, oops, the ID. So we've got the ID to bake, and then hopefully if I say bake selected, it'll just bake the ID of this guy, and now it's showing the skin, and then it switches over. I'm sure it switches over and shows you the other model. No, it didn't. So if I quickly go and have a look at the ID, and then I look at this eyeball, he's got an ID now as well, just in case you need it. So it's there. So with all that said and done, I'm happy with those materials and textures for now because they're just something as a blocker to put on, and we've got a substance painter scene, so I'll just export Monster C and we'll get our very first texture pack for Monster C really quickly, minus one or two mishaps, but this is kind of what happens. But this is going to be like a template scene anyway, so if you ever need to do something really quick, all this like discovery and hard work is saved in network nodes, you know, and it's all kind of just in there, and you can save these out as digital assets and drop them down and extract them if you wanted, so you don't lose any of this information. So let's just jump back into Painter, and I've got this guy, so I'm happy with that. So I'm gonna export those textures, and I don't have to do anything, I just have to go export. And if we go quickly back to our place where we have been working on the monsters project, under assets, monsters, data, textures, exfiles from Painter, we've got a Monster C there, so we've got everything in there. So again, I'm not using metallic in my shader, I don't think, and I don't have emissive, so I'm going to delete them so they don't become rats. And as I mentioned earlier, it would have actually been a good time to maybe create a new template called creature or whatever, and then just remove the unwanted stuff at the source here. So you would remove metallic, you just delete that here, like click, and it's gone. But I'm lazy and I just use the same template over and over again. So that's material 1. So we'll quickly fast forward and save a version 2 like so. All right, we're done. We quickly just popped on 3 texture packs, so we should have a texture pack for, if we go into EXRs, we should have 3, 3 and 3, so that's good. So all we need to do is, let me just check, I don't need emission, and I should remove these from substance painter, really. Emission and metallic, I don't really need those. So yeah, I think the next thing is to create the wrap packs. So again, we've done it already by the looks of it here. I'm going to get rid of emission and metallic here. They won't be in the files anyway when we ship them. I just leave them in sometimes just in case I need them till the very end. So yeah, we need the rats, don't we? So if we go over to, and we come back up, you may have noticed I created a couple of custom, I created 2 extra versions of the spots, but it, you know, you could do this so many more efficient ways as well, but maybe that was the design you needed. So for the rats, again, it's back over here, and I'm just going to jump in and I'm just going to change this to C. This is going to grab everything that it finds, hopefully, in C. So dirty old generate static work items. So if you look, it's, yep, you can see it's picking up C2 and then 3. So I'll cook and, well, save and cook those out. So, and that's what our shader is actually loading in straight away. So it's loading in the rats for these automatically. So all that's left to do really is decide whether or not we want to create another pose version of 4 Monster B and C using the same Vellum setup And I think because the way I've done this, it'll be copy and paste, plug and play, and it should just work. So let's try that in a bit, and then we'll finish off by working out what we're going to do with this guy. So we've got like a custom thing here, haven't we? So I guess we could do something similar to what we've done here. So we could just give him the same treatment. Just for now. So I'm going to take what I did here. So he was referencing Monster Pink A material path. So I'm going to copy that path. I'm going to paste that in. Actually, I'm just going to Alt and pull this down like so. I'm going to plug that in, plug that in, plug that in. So we've got monster pose A, 1, 2, 3. Then we've got the fascia, it's going to the same fascia. So that's correct. What I might do is copy this guy into here so he picks up his material. How are we doing with that? Is that working? Let's take a look. So this one's working. So I'm surprised it's not finding this texture on this, because I think it does exist. Look, it's there. Oh, let's read help. No, now it's working. Weird. Okay. So all I've done is kind of referencing the material library and the assignments from here, from this material library into these guys. They are going to get the same fascia, but I'm kind of cool with that for now. Meaning that these were basically using the same one material. So this was using this material, which is in here. So it's using these. And then this fascia was going uniquely to this here and here. So let's see what happens if we just start rendering everything. So let's just do a Shift R and let's fire up the XPU. So you've got monster A pink or 1. We might actually clip these guys just so I can check things inside and how they look. Did we clip this guy? We never clipped. No, we have clipped him quite a lot. Okay, so that's the headlights. You've got the veins and stuff going off in there, and then you've got this version here. It's a slightly different look on the inside, just because we wanted to, but it's posed. And then we'll look at this version. So we're going to have a skin variation. I don't think we changed the color of the inside much anyway, because we're not going to see it. So just wait for Houdini to decide to crash or to return a render. Because we should be looking at this. Let me just Shift R, see what's happening there. Something disappeared here. That was weird. Just Shift R again. There he is. So he's I think he's a slightly different color. They're very subtle on these ones. And then this guy should load in as well. So all you're going to be seeing is different material variants appearing. I'm not really seeing any change. It's like my machine's hanging a little bit here. strange. Let me just shift R again and then shift R one more time. My computer's thinking. Okay, nothing's happening. Shift R. I'm going to do a restart the render. Shift R again. Kicked it up the butt. There we go. So there's a slight difference. I think there's a difference in material variation. I might go back and tweak those. They don't look completely different to me. So I'm curious if I have to actually change them, but at least there's a texture for each one. Soon become apparent when they're all three together. And then for the pose guy, he's getting like the same materials on the outside as the guy on the left. So because it's the same guy, but it's just, this is just for look dev. I wouldn't send this to any scene. And then we've got Monster B, which we've seen. He's not being clipped temporarily. Then we've got another one. So these are quite drastic. These color changes probably look really bad when they're rendered, but you can see that it's working. We've got these different. Oof, I'm not sure about that guy. And then finally we've got Monster, the new Monster coming in, who's got the same kind of color. Again, this is no lighting set up, is it? It's just the headlight. So we've got three. So I think we're done with the whole thing. So that's all good. We've got stuff in place. Now the time consuming thing is making your designs look good and shift R. So we essentially now have, let me just make sure I've piped everything in. This guy needs to be right click, change the wire and plug it in. So we've got geometry variant A underscore pose 01 and B and C. Pose 01 came from our Vellum setup, this guy, like that. And then we've just applied substance painter packs and we're sharing them across here. Then we've got a unique substance painter pack for this. So that's 3 material variants for each geometry variant, excluding these, so you can mix and match and do what you like. So let's just see what happens if I go to the bottom now, and let's see if we can set this up. So what light maps? We've got 3 light maps. Material variants 1, 2 and 3 is correct, and geometry variants, let's add Mr. C, geometry variant C, and we don't really need the comps. We could actually just turn them off by doing that if you want. I'd put a switch in and have them doing nothing. Whoops. If you really wanted to. Why is there such a gap there? There we go. So maybe I will just do a dry run, dirty old static work items, and see what we get. So if I come and look down here and look through my render settings and my camera, everything's correct. And then just click on this guy, file save, and let's just start render Karma up. Let's just start the render up. Let's just either go up here and do Karma XPU or press Shift R. So this is in the lighting environment of the studio, quite crazy studio thing. So that's one, and then let's take a look. That's the other lighting area. Okay, I feel like I'm not getting the geometry, you know, the material variants. There should be more. So I think what's happened is I've not counted them properly. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then if I go and dirty old generate static work items, and now if I click on this, we should start to get, should be able to iterate through the material variants as well. So I might try and figure out how to order these. So eventually you're going to see just the material variants happening in the right order and stuff as well, which is probably not a problem, because right now I think it's just cycling through. I don't know what order it's cycling in. I'll have to work that out. Ooh, wait, something's wrong there. Did something feel wrong there? I'm sure I saw something weird happen there. there he is. There's a mistake. GeoA Pinko 2. GeoA Pinko 2 doesn't have any assignments. Let's have a look. A pose 01. And what did we call it in here? A pose 01. Just check. Could it be the referencing of these materials? But then variant name Pinko 1. Oh. Ooh. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this because this is getting me Pinko 2 and I want this one to have, no, I want it to be paste relative reference. I want that to be Pinko 2 as well. And then because I'm procedurally grabbing the name, and I'm just, you could just write what you want in there, so you don't have to be procedural with this. It's just going to paste relative references, and that should be Pink 03. I could have just written Pinko 10203 or 10203 in there, to be honest. That wouldn't have tripped me up. So I was trying to be smart by having the pink underscore pad 0 up digits. So I was just trying to grab it and say, give me a give me a variant called Pinko 1. Then if I copy this, it gives me a Pinko 2. But because I copied them over, maybe it just confused it a little. All right, so we are done with the kind of the asset section. So we should now be able to quickly run through each frame and just confirm it is actually working. So what I might do is just check my render settings are low, my frame range. I'm just going to grab one frame, go to dirty all, generate static work items, and I'm just going to run one frame through. In fact, I'm going to just render from here. This is going to create a comp, and I'm going to detach it from here. I could just bypass them as well. So it's not going to run that. So maybe I'll just dirty all, generate static work, and cook items and save. And that's going to just save to disk. I wonder if I could have just forced that to I wonder if just, oh no, wait, cancel dirty all, generate static work items. Oh, it's only got one now. So I think you need to have the export flag on here. Dirty all, generate static work items. So because it's orange and the export flag is orange, this is the way it is. So I think maybe if there's an output thing in here, that might be wise to just plug your output in, and then maybe that will be a consistent export as well. So maybe now I can cook the output nodes and just do a one frame low quality render just to make sure that the all the geometry variants have been authored correctly, and all the substance painter textures have gone from EXR to rats and have been auto applied into the material variants, and then each library is there assigning that. So we should hopefully get something for everyone. Okay, so I rendered one frame of everything at just 640 by 360, so you will get a representation of everything. So just one frame to confirm everything is now tickety-boo, working fine. So it's going through like that. And that's that. So it's worked. So it's kind of worked. So what I would do now is I'm going to just render the whole lot and put it through the comps, and I'm going to render that at 640 because my machine will take forever to do that. But at least then you can take a look at these. When you download, you'll have the renders that go with this. So I'm going to set it from frame range only. I'm going to set it from stage so it respects what's happening in the stage. So we'll get this for everyone. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to reactivate my comp. I'm going to just plug that back in for now, plug that in, So don't forget that's going to do everything in one swift move. It's going to be a lot of renders, I guess, but dirty all generate static work items. So that's going to give me that, and then I just need to make sure that frame range from stage. So that should be everything, and that should go to disk. So just to kind of flush out any other renders, I'm going to go to the job, Patron, monsters, render, assets, and then there's cops and there's Houdini. So I'm just going to, again, ooh, what's monster? What's that? That's weird. 28th, when was that? Oh, I tell you, that'll be from the broken calculation. So I'm going to just stick that through in another folder. I don't normally do it like this, but I'm just not wanting to damage any old renders from which might be HD that I'm using. So that was the cops, and then Houdini. I've got quite a lot in here, as you can see. So I'll just do the same again for now. So at least I've not deleted the renders, but we do have a clean place for Houdini to dump the renders and the compositing and stuff. So hopefully this should now render the frame range, and it should spin round, and we should get an auto comp for everything. So let's see what that does. I think I left mplay monitor on as well, so it's actually going to return the renders to the screen. And I'm only rendering at low samples, remember, because even though this says this is like full res and this many samples, I'm catching it here in this switch node is triggering. You can see the solid wire here saying this switch node is looking at this RS low, render settings low. So let's see what happens. I'm rendering this, so it's just going to calculate everything and then start running this to the screen and to disk. So the first one will appear, and like we did before, hopefully not too repetitive, but we should get the renders coming through. Let me just expand this in assets and then in Houdini, and then we'll get the first one coming through in here like that. And I don't think it'll comp them until this particular sequence is finished. So when this sequence is finished, it'll run the comp for this and do the grey background, the occlusion pass, which is really just taking this this AOV and doing some trickery with that. You know, I thought we had not flipped his head, but I'm not too fussed. I also realized I've not actually saved out the USD file either. So I will go over that when the video is done. I will save the if I'll just do it now. Right now this is live, so I'm going to just save this to disk, and I'm going to save it to version 4, so we've got a clean save that. And because it's got localized external non-USD files, subdirectory textures, it's going to throw everything into a folder. So if we go back up to the project, hopefully it's not going to crash. Patron, monsters, assets, monster, USD version 4. This is the USD file, and these are all the textures that are getting saved as we speak. So these are kind of being populated as we speak. So like we mentioned before, that can be shipped onto another project and things like that. But I would just switch over to that and render this one from disk to be a bit more, hopefully a bit more optimized. So yeah, very fast render with no motion blur. So it's up to you how slow you want to make these, and if you want to put motion blur and what resolution. Like I said, it's just a quick way of just looking at a model. So the USD file is complete. We can tell because it's just created the payload in the material library. So we should have everything in there. So all the uniquely named variants. So it's just labeled them like that. So hopefully that's all right for now. So meanwhile, it's just going to render these down into here like so. And I think it's a 50 frame render. So yeah, I'll come back when it's done and we'll take a look at and see what we've got on disk. And yeah, and then we'll probably do maybe, while it's rendering, maybe I could destroy my machine and maybe we could take this and do this with it. So I'm going to copy and paste this. I'm going to press escape. And I'm going to plug that in and I'm going to say monster B01. And then I'm going to go in and see if I can quickly do the Vellum setup very quickly, see if everything still works. So we've got the animation procedurally copied like so, and then the tetrahedral generation might need a bit of nudging around, but it should, because it's procedural, it should just work. So my machine is screaming right now because it is actually trying to render it's trying to render this. And I won't have a render of this new pose yet, but I can render him individually at the end if my machine doesn't give up on me. So it's going to spin round, the geometry is going to spin round, and then the light rig's going to spin round, and it's just going to keep repeating. So right now, in this sort modifier, which I've called CFX Monster B01, it's going through that remeshing process that I showed you earlier, and that's just the subnet. It's all in there. So I'm going to quickly, the remeshing is a little bit heavy because it goes into VDB and remeshing and stuff. But because I made it quite procedural, this would have normally been finished if my computer wasn't rendering, but this would have created a sim mesh. And then everything else should just work. And we can just quickly run through it and see whether or not that's the case. So remeshing is a little slow, but like I mentioned, it's something I prefer to bake down. So we will bake this down to disk, and because I've got this kind of system going off, if you remember on the job itself under Patron, monsters, assets, monster, and then data, and then the modeling department in Geo, we're going to dump everything into monsters CFX monster B01 when we finish this. So when this is finished remeshing, we'll just save it, and we'll save everything like we did in here with the DC kind of saves. We'll save everything into there and we'll get a pose. So it's still stuck on 32%, so I might quickly just jump back when it's done. VDB from polygons, tech conform. So it's telling me down here what it's doing. So there's my sim mesh. You know what? I'm going to trust it worked because I was quite careful with this before. So we saved that out, and there's the new folder, and there'll be DC it says MA, so that's something to look out for because I should name this off of something else, so we should just call this MAB. So if I made this procedural, or I didn't have if I'd not messed that up, I could save that out. It seems to be remeshing again, which is a bit annoying. We just press escape. That should be MB. I could just take the name of this and put that in here like that as well. So it could just be CFX Monster B01. So it's a unique piece of geometry as well. So, but it depends what you want to do. There's so many ways of proceduralizing things. Meanwhile, our render is, the first version is done. So it's kind of spun round, the light rig's gone round. And then I think it'll just change from the light rig. So yeah, we've gone from the studio to the gardens. So you can see this is happening with all the AOVs. And I wondered if, because this is finished, I wonder if the comp was there as well. So while this is remeshing again, I don't know why it's remeshing again. It's all I did was rename it, but we will have an additional mesh in here which we don't want. So I'm going to just delete that because that's going to be called something else when it saves out again. Let's check the comps. Let's see what's happening with the comps on these monsters. Render, assets, comps. I don't know if it's not done a comp yet, so maybe the comps run at the very end. I think that might be what's happening. It might wait for all the renders to finish and then run the comps. But we'll find out soon enough. I should have really tested that through. I think I have tested that, and I think it's the way I've set it up. I think you could make it comp every frame of every EXR that it renders, but yeah. So this is still remeshing, so let's just quickly, hopefully this will just fly through now. And this is the slowest part, I think. The slowest part of any setup is really just getting the right values. So if we save that out now, we should have a monster B, and then we should have inside of that, because this is named after the, what's it called, the SOP modify. It's going to have created a piece of sim geometry inside of here, and it should be called DC. Oh wait, so I've found that, you see this says A, well it keeps what I'm going to do just for now, I'm going to set this to manual, and when sometimes these things, when you right click, it's resolving to an expression, but I've found that if you just, because I need the $OS expression to be MB like that, so it names it after that, but sometimes that just locks up on the previous entry, which was MA. So just because I don't want to calculate things again, just watch out for that. I am just going to manually change that to B for now, so I don't hold up the video anytime soon. Just make sure that's B. So yeah, we could probably proceduralize that a little bit more. So with that done, we can now set this back to auto update, and let's just stop him from rendering. Then we know we've got all our attributes and our constraints, and let's just throw that straight through the Vellum and see what happens. I can't remember so there he is. So let's just see whether this works. Maybe the groupings for the constraints might need a bit of fudging and things. Not sure. They don't look like they're falling to me. Oh, maybe they are. A little bit stiff though. That fall off might need changing. But this is just, I've just copy and pasted. Apart from the TET mesh naming thing, which I missed, which I could automate. We're getting like a posed model. Might look alright actually. I'm not particularly precious about the pose, it's just giving it something different. So we can really work on this a lot more, but hopefully this is just showing you why I did it this way. And also this setup is going to let me plug in this and add extra things like eyeballs and things. So we'll pose him. So he's posed. That's kind of ugly. And then we'll just save it. So this is again wired in to DC Sims, so it's just going to go into the correct location. So if my machine doesn't die, under here it's there. So that's done. And then I think there might be some filing stuff, but again I think I made that quite procedural, so hopefully it still all stands and looks okay. But again, not everything's going to be 100% procedural, but look how quickly this has kind of got me somewhere. So I'll get the proxy hopefully, and yep, and the render geometry. So DC monster publish, save. So while I'm like rendering a test render, I've actually just quickly copied over a sim setup from what we did for this guy. And I might tweak that a little bit, but it shows you how easy it is to copy and paste these procedural networks to a certain degree and get something quickly. So we'll just wait for this to kind of finish. So he is now on disk. We press up, we better save. And then we could then do the same thing and have a B monster version as well. So we could just kind of grab all of this across here and paste that into there. We'll have to make a bit of room. I'll just call it B for now, or 1, and then B. We don't need to have that. I'll just make sure all these are kind of just named a little bit nicer. So I want him to go in there, so I'm going to do probably an object merge of this kind of. So yeah, I mean, really all I have to do is click B and then he's in there. So, and that's gonna time shift to the frame I want, which is that frame, but maybe I want to change that frame, have him a little bit squashier. Squashier, that a word? Now my machine is really slow right now. So yeah, so that's feeding into that, and we've got we've got this guy clipped again, posed. I'm ready to kind of do the same treatment with the materials, so I'll just kind of come back when the renders are done, and then we'll render this separately afterwards. So hopefully it just kind of shows you an interesting way of quickly because remember, I'm not animating this, I'm just posing him because I don't have a rig or anything, so I'm just kind of doing something, and the clipping's optional. I wouldn't really need to clip him in Alpha like that. So it's just an option to play around in Solaris for kind of concept sculpting and presenting things automatically. So I thought, when someone asked me that question, I thought, yeah, it's a really cool question. I wonder if I could set something up, but there are other ways of doing everything in Houdini, but I just thought maybe we'll have a quick go without any Python. Okay, I used a little bit of Python, but not a great deal, and not enough to scare anybody off, I don't think. So yeah, I will come back with a follow-up video just showing the full thing finished, and then I'll prepare this and I'll stick it all on Patreon. The full project will be on Patreon with the small renders, so you'll be able to go up there and pull it down, unzip it, and then set your job to the top level. So you download it in somewhere, wherever you'd like, place it here, unpack it, and then set your job to this level, and everything will just work. So we'll take a look at everything when we're finished and see what's happening. So it looks like the comps are also coming through. So there are the comps now. Strangely, it's just one frame, which makes me think I've set something up in Copernicus incorrect. And this is why it's good always testing things, because even though this is the full frame range for this system, we're actually referencing, inside of it, we're referencing Copernicus nodes, and we're saying, like, we're basically looking at the ROP node configuration, which essentially means do what this is telling me to do in here, these guys, and these were doing the current frame. So I'm not going to change this until everything's finished, but I'll rerun just this bit with this set to the right frame range. So we'll get one frame for everything. But then when it's finished rendering its tasks completely, I'll rerun just this bit, and it should just work. But we'll do that in the next video, along with rendering this guy individually as well. So yeah, hopefully that's been something interesting. Thanks for your time. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this this project up now. So I've added the Vellum simulation for this guy. We've chosen a frame, so we've kind of froze the frame here, and then I've taken the material library and shared that across like so, and that's just kind of going up and grabbing stuff from here. And then just to make the assignments, it's just basically ASIC geo, and it's just assigning everything for simplicity. So even though I've done more complicated things over in this guy, this is a lot simpler. And then for the variant name, if I middle click on this guy, it says Pinko 1 and this says Pinko 2, and it's just basically reference copying. So I'm taking this expression and reference copying that into here. So if you middle click, so you can see these little lines. So it's kind of just procedural. So if I ever do a monster B Pinko 4, when I copy and paste the pad 0 to opt digits expression will append a underscore numerical value across, and then what we will do is reference copy that into the variant name over here, so it's exactly the same. And then the material path is also just stealing the material from inside of here across. So essentially what will happen is the this guy, whether he's posed or if he's dropped and cut in half and he's got, and we look between the materials, so you just get the same thing. I wouldn't normally send out a posed version anyway into ASIC. It's quite purple, that, isn't it? But that's that. So it's just a test, and we can always detach these guys later if we want, but they're quite helpful for look dev, I think, sometimes. So before we render absolutely everything, I realized in my top network, when I'm about to render these comps, I click on one of these to take me into Copernicus. We were only rendering one frame, so we want to render frame range. There's no render frame range from stage, so we'll just render the frame range, and that's the correct frame range. So this is going to go through and comp everything as well. So it's going to feed in the renders as we saw in here, and then everything will just get comped. Even the HDRIs are going to get comped in there as well. So to bring this all together now, I'm going to dirty all, generate the static work items, and then hopefully we should have a sequence for every single one like that. So we can just kind of pop our camera in here, and it's going to go through and do absolutely everything, which is probably overkill. So you can see that we can pick everything we want. So the thing that I might need to do is add and update my tops network to be pulling in this pose 01 as well, otherwise he may never render. So in tops, as you know, we've got the light rigs, we've got the material variants 1, 2 and 3. Everything has 1, 2 and 3. Geometry variants, we've got A, and now we click here and then we can paste that in and just put a B in there. So we're now picking up all of the geometry variants 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'd have to click 5 wedges to wedge over this particular variable, which is the name, and then everything else is just updated and it should work. So now we'll just have to dirty all, generate the static work items, file, save, and then if you select one of these, because our display flag is at the end of our network chain, we should see everything update. So you should see the spinny thing going off, and then we should see, eventually we should see one of these guys chopped. There he is, chopped in half. So I don't think we've actually looked at him with some proper lighting for a while. So there he is, looking all sad. He looks quite sad, doesn't he? So so yeah, that looks kind of interesting. So we will now go ahead and I will fire off the render, and then I'll come back when it's all done and we'll kind of call it done, and we'll now have an asset to proceed with further more complicated Vellum simulations. So let me cook the output node. So as I mentioned before, it's all going to go to the place where we've already established on disk, and it's just going to return that to mplay, which I probably wouldn't have done, but I'm just doing it for this tutorial, and I'm only rendering a very low resolution. But that's okay, because all of these images will just be pushed up to HD in the comp anyway, and that's fine for me really. So this is just going to go through and process all of that data, and then start returning our first render to the mplay monitor so we can view it. When that finishes, it'll save it to disk, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. So here he comes, so our first guy we're quite familiar with. So off he goes. So that is it. So I'll be back when it's done, and then we'll close this this series, and then we'll start having some fun with Vellum, and we'll take our monsters that won't be chopped up in a final USD, and maybe we'll start a brand new project and to start doing some interesting things with these. So we'll start a brand new project, but at least now you know where the asset came from and how I took an iPad sculpt and made a USD variant and everything. And then if anybody wants to see a non-painter version where we just go and do some Copernicus, we can drop one of those tutorials in, and we'll do Copernicus texturing on this guy and try to make some like alien looking skin, and we'll do the veins and spots and stuff and things in Copernicus substance designer type of way. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it all, and I'll be putting up the final thing, spinning around, and then we'll call it a day. Thanks for your time. All right, so we are done. What I decided to do is just render 10 frames for each one, and it took my machine an hour, so quickly it's going to look crazy because it's going to be super quick. But what I did is, if you remember down here, we can set the frame range, and I just set it to 10. So what's happening is the light rig is going to the creature, sorry, is going to spin for 5 frames. It's going to try and do a 360, and then the light rig is going to spin around as well. So it's going to be super quick. So you're going to get like this, and then a quick light rig spin round. So all I've done in here is I've basically set this up to read the HDRI maps that I want. So I'm going to wedge between those two and my garden, and then I've pulled in all 3 material variants, and I've pulled in the wedges, 5 wedges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for A. So you've got all the different poses, the Vellum stuff we did for fun. Then it's going to render, and I'm not going to render the comp just yet. So I'm going to hit render, and then that took my machine an hour to render super fast turntables all like this. So that's just to prove that it's working. I don't really want to do this many on a local machine maybe, or but you might do. You might want to do one at a time. But that's going to render it in nice order as well. So it's going to render geometry variant A. It's going to go through the different light rigs, and you're going to get a different material variant. Now he's quite similar to material variants, but when you move on to the this is still model A posed there, and then B, as he moves through, you'll see that you'll get the same material in different light rigs, and then it changes to different material into the light rig. So you've got like there we go. So there's the 3rd material variant, and it's just being looked under different light rigs, and so on and so forth. So probably a little bit overkill, especially with this setup. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So on disk they have gone to, let's have a look, Houdini. So we've gone to the monsters project, render asset Houdini, and they've all been rendered into individual folders like that. So it's quite a lot of folders there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to just take the variables here and plug those in, and then just plug this in. So I'm just doing a bit of a manual thing. I could have had this all run in one swift move as well. So what I'm going to do is go tasks, generate static nodes. In fact, let's go tasks, generate work items just to check everything's working. And that's good. File, save, and then going to go to tasks again, and then cook the output node. So what this should do is respect all these variables should be going out into the comp. So if you remember in our comp, we're loading the image and the HDRIs using these variables here. Now we could do it differently. We could go onto disk and find them as well, but this just ensures that they're going to come out the right way, I think, as well. So it's going to be okay, but we could have just done it all in one swift move. So what that's going to do is run the grey comp, and then it's going to run the same comp and hit the switch node with the Python expression and do the HDRI comp. So if you want to have both, you can. Then on disk, what that's going to do is going to generate a folder, and it's going to slowly go through and generate the grey comp. So hopefully, whatever this is, the monster A, there we go. We've got the monster A. This guy should be getting comped as well, so we're kind of getting that. So it's a bit mushy because the renders are really small and it's just been scaled up, but you know, it's just a test. So that should make its way through, and this could take some time because Copernicus isn't super quick, and I think also the original HDRI image that we often render when we do the HDRI version is a huge file, and it really shouldn't, I shouldn't really be pulling in something that large and then scaling it down to HD, so that might have a bit of an effect on the performance of Copernicus as well. But if it's something that you run overnight, then you'll get those frames done, and then it'll go ahead and do the HDRI. So you should have the next grey comp, and what that will do, it will just go through all the grey comps first, and then it'll do the HDRI comps and then the occlusion comps. So you can set this up to do them all at the same time in all sorts of configurations. But I'm just going to let them run one at a time. I think it's just easier to get a package done and then just have a look at them. So yeah, it's going to move on to this guy, and we're going to get the same thing. So we're going to get this grey comp on this guy as well. So yeah, these are the Garden. This is the Garden HDRI, and this is the Studio HDRI. So much like what we got here with it spinning around, Studio and then Garden. So it's kind of working. So I'll just let that finish, and then I'll call this exercise finished, and then maybe in future tutorials we'll look at making this a bit more streamlined and improving it even more. If you're finding this tutorial useful, why not drop a like and let me know in the comments. And if you're interested in learning more Houdini, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next tutorial.